Good evening, folks. This is Mark Gray from France for Freedom UFOs. It's a pleasure tonight to host a team of producers, actors, and directors, movie directors, with me, Tonia Madenford and Frank Jacob, live from Germany, actually, where they're based right now, working at the post-production studio for the release of Packing for Mars, the movie, the documentary movie that I'm hosting him for and about, that deals with the secret agenda involving a survival colony on Mars, and this agenda, they're describing it in a more artistic way than the usual documentaries that we see all over, and they'll be joining me tonight on the Project Camelot TV network, thanks to Carrie Cassidy, who's also featured in the movie, along with her former partner, and many renowned speakers and whistleblowers that have interviewed myself, such as Alfred Weber. We talk about, Michael Sala talks about Captain K, whom I have interviewed under his real name, Randy Kramer, over a year ago, and also Jerry Wells and a few others in the movie. I'm going to have them introduce themselves one after another. Ladies first, I guess. Tonia, can you tell me about your projects, your past filmography, and your experience as a movie producer and director?
Sure, Mark. Thank you so much for having us on the air. This is so great. As you said, I was the executive producer and producer working with Frank Jacob on Packing for Mars. We've teamed up on several projects together, Solar Revolution being one of them. We did the Klaus Stonner Chronicles. We also were working on Stranger at the Pentagon with Craig Campobasso, who I think was a guest on your show. It's been a wonderful last few years putting out consciousness-based films. I also work in Hollywood. I share time between producing and script supervising, so I do work in mainstream. But I actually get my most joy out of consciousness-based related films like this one. I've done several films with Jose Escamilla, who is a phenomenal director as well. We've done, oh gosh, probably 4 to 6 films together. So, yeah. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Thank you for being with me tonight and with us. Frank, what can you tell me about what can you tell us about your team and your past experience and what you enjoy doing
Well, I sort of started at this probably from a crossroads. I entered via music. I started my life as a musician, and I eventually moved from performing music on stage to writing music in studios. That led to, of course, as technology developed, working with the tools in those studios, and then along came computers, and I moved into post-audio and eventually video. And it's been a long, slow progression, and I've always been interested in how music and pictures affects things when you put them together. And one day I knew I wanted to get into making films that would possibly affect consciousness, because I was really inspired early on by, you know, like the global brain, for example, or films that really, you know, would help push the envelope of awakening consciousness, which I think I always recognized early on as, I think, the frontier direction that filmmaking was going into. And in later years, I've gotten involved in professional television production, where I work at a large television production company, and I've kind of been sort of traveling both paths. On the one hand, I work in the commercial sense, working with the tools and state-of-the-art production. On the other level, I work on consciousness-based films, and it was inevitable, I guess, at some point that I would run into Tonia Madenford.
Yeah, you have the
Is that a good start?
Yeah, excellent start, and a beautiful start, actually. And you have a constant message throughout the movie, which I've seen a couple times, which is, you know, consciousness rising and universal connection and the cosmic unity and all the beautiful messages from your various speakers, actually, from the Dogon tribe initiate, whose name I don't quite remember. I think it was Noma, right? And through to actually just to start with, to begin, well, Laura Eisenhower, of course, who's actually quite a spiritual person for a U.S. president's great granddaughter, which is not incompatible. What can you tell us inspired you to shoot the movie? Let's go back to Leslie Watkins and the British documentary from the late '70s called Alternative. Okay.
Alternative 3.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us about?
You're very right. This is really the birthplace of the movie. Although at the time that I received that I learned about the book, I had no idea it would turn into Packing for Mars, of course, because that was many years ago. Mm-hmm. However, the person who gave me that book was a very intellectual and very respected person in their community to this day, and they, I respected them so much that when they pulled this book out of the blue and started talking about it being the truth masked as science fiction, it never really left me. And so after I read it, I was intrigued by the book, of course, and it kind of sat with me for a long time. And it wasn't until I was at a point in my life where I was ready to make to do a project which kind of encompassed a lot of the skills that I've been gathering over the years, starting from music to visuals to editing and filmmaking and composition and sound design. And I thought, I need a project I can sink my teeth into. And it was right about that time that I was late one night surfing the web, and I heard this woman talking about having been recruited to the Mars colony, and it interested me, of course, and I stuck with it, and all of a sudden I realized that it was Laura Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. And I was saying to myself, like, come on, like, really? Is this really Laura Eisenhower, like the great-granddaughter of the, and she's talking about Mars, and it all came flooding back at that moment, and I thought, geez, like, this is it. This is the story. And I made a little pact to myself that I was going to try and find her on the internet and write to her. And if she got back to me, and it was a message from the universe that I should proceed with making this film. And so that's pretty much how it happened. I looked her up, and I found an email, and I wrote it before I went to bed at night, and I got up the next morning, and boom, there was her email there, and she was enthusiastic about me coming there to talk to her. She had kind of had this attitude like, it's about time, like, like, get over here, let's do something. So, and I have to also give credit to Alfred Weber, because it was on his show that she was talking, and also another character that was talking in Alfred's show was Andrew Bushago. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, here we have a nucleus of a start. And
who's running for president right now?
No, he wasn't running for president yet. So he, at that time, I think he just published a paper, Life on Mars, and I thought this was, he's a very powerful orator. He speaks well. He's got an excellent, capacity of the English language, and I was really impressed by that. It's so few people are so articulate that I just thought, this is really good, material to go out and pursue, because I've been working in documentaries and a lot of sports films, and many people aren't so articulate. So I thought this would be a good start, and and Alfred Weber ended up being sort of the gatekeeper and the gateway to opening up the door to a lot of people, including Carrie Cassidy, which was one of the very first people that I of course interviewed.
We have some exciting news to share as well. Packing for Mars all started with the inspiration of Alternative 3, which was a book written by Leslie Watkins. Now fast forward 40 years later, after this sci-fi cult classic novel comes out, and we hear actually from Graham Watkins, who's Leslie's son, who's publishing an all-new Alternative 3, new material. They're republishing and re-releasing Alternative 3. They saw the trailer of Packing for Mars. They, of course, were extremely excited. And they reached out to us, and they've now teamed up with us. And after 40 years, Leslie Watkins is now coming out of retirement. Looks like he's going to be writing a new book. We are absolutely happy and thrilled to support Alternative 3, and in turn, they're also assisting us with the film. So
yeah, and I think that what was cool about Leslie is he really recognized that what we're doing with Packing for Mars is a continuation of what he started 40 years ago. You know, the film isn't a one-to-one recreation of the novel. It's an analysis of how 40 years ago there was this book, this classic, and it combined with scenes from that famous television program, and how it might translate into what's going on in the scene with Mars today. So it's really part of the same spirit of investigation.
Yes, but back then it was labeled as a sheer sci-fi movie on the BBC. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
but they got a lot of flack. I mean, it was like the War of the Worlds of England. You know, people called in and freaked out, and they were like, "Come on, this can't be!" And we're outraged, and they had to make a step back and say, "Hey, didn't you see it was all actors? You don't recognize the actors in this?" And
Leslie went through some really wild times too. I mean, he apparently had his phones tapped. He actually relocated to New Zealand. On his way, in terms of moving to New Zealand, I guess all of his materials were confiscated. He lost everything, to my knowledge. So there were some really weird events that happened with Leslie as well, and he knew that he had stepped into something.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And what is said is that the footage of the Mars landing would be actual footage of a Mars landing.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, that I was very, very tempted to include this in the film, but I chose not to, because I think that should remain in the context of how it was first presented. And I think there's plenty of other and compelling new information which also needed a place in today. And as you can imagine, you've watched the film, it's 2 hours long, which is actually long, but in a way not long enough, and there's so much information we had to take out of the movie to make it shortened so that it would actually still be within 2 hours.
It's still a fast ride down the rabbit hole.
And the story of Leslie's story is we're probably going to be bringing out more information about that in the future, because we have plans to interview Leslie, of course, and to maybe to do like a little featurette and bring out more of that story for people in the coming days.
But since what's been disclosed in various interviews and documentaries about the secret space programs and the whistleblowers from the secret space program coming forward, former military or super soldiers, testimonies, and engineers who have worked in those programs, and your movie, is it possible that Leslie's son would write something labeled as sci-fi today, or would he present it as something actual and real? Because reality actually goes further than his fictional movie from the 70s today. I mean, reality, according to witnesses and whistleblowers, I mean, we're much further up the path of disclosure than what his movie was showing back in the days.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what Leslie will come up with in this new book, because I think he's been really inspired by the development of exopolitics, which at the time that he wrote the book didn't exist. And I'm positive that he's being influenced by all this new information, and I'm really psyched to see what he's going to come up with.
Exactly.
I'm just thrilled. We're both thrilled that he's inspired enough that we kind of like, I guess, say it nicely, just spurred him to come out of retirement and start writing again at a ripe old young age of 85.
And can you tell us about the whole topic, the whole idea behind the think tank of those elite keepers. I wouldn't say elite because it's too nice a word, but I guess this group of predators who want to escape to Mars and think that Earth is doomed to a bad ending, and that's the key topic that is common to Alternative 3 and your movie, I think. This is why Carrie said in your movie that we need to take care of our planet first before, and also Laura says it in the movie.
Absolutely. Well, the word elite is really only a word that symbolizes a state or a status of person that has a certain a view over a situation, perhaps because of their wealth, perhaps because of their power or influence. And the idea that you would, let's assume you had been given privy to information about interaction, let's say, with off-world beings, extraterrestrials, and they had passed technology down to certain segment of people that had the ability to take that technology and quietly develop that technology in lieu of knowing something was approaching the planet. That could be perhaps a planetary body, or it could be perhaps a pollution, or global warming, or whatever it was. If you knew that you had the technology, you had all the money and the power in the world to do something with that technology, and you saw it as your job and obligation to preserve the human species with that knowledge, you would probably do it. So the idea of an Alternative 3, which represents an alternative of several, which we can talk about later if you want, is to safe harbor, let's say, a segment or like a Noah's Ark of the human race. And the idea of Noah's Ark is enshrined in the Bible, as we all know. So I don't think it's a very far-fetched idea that in the modern world there could be such a group of people who are trying to preserve that species for what they see is the greater good. Now, the question is, and this is where you were saying with Laura and what Carrie was saying, often this attitude sacrifices the idea that we actually could put our minds to solving problems here on Earth rather than going anywhere else. And those and the application of those ideas and putting the greatest minds and funding them with as much money as they need to, like an Apollo mission of our day, like the way Kennedy threw everything at them to get to the moon, I'm convinced that we could actually solve a lot of the problems and not have to go off Earth to do anything about preserving humanity.
Right. Exactly. Can you go over the scenario, the script of the movie real quick for the viewers who are not accustomed with Packing for Mars yet, for maybe a minute, 30 seconds, if you. Tonia, you want to talk about it?
One man inspired with a camera goes out on an adventure and meets a mysterious spirit. No, it really was like the X-Files, and we touched upon a lot of different subjects in the film. Breakaway civilizations, the whole Mars component, anomalies even on the moon. We went into time travel and teleportation and secret space missions. And we touched upon all of these subjects. And just as Frank said, we have to look at certain events that may transpire on this planet in the future. One thing that we couldn't really expand on and explore with the film, because we were at 2 hours, we could have made this easily a 5 to 6 hour film. We weren't really able to go too much into timelines, and this is something that I wish we really could have expanded on. We got into certain technologies, which is very interesting technology, like the great physicist Ernst Minkowski. We involved him. He was one of the presenters that went into the whole idea and device of the chronovisor, who could peer into certain timelines and peer into events that had transpired on the planet. And we addressed this a little bit, but I think in terms of, as Eisenhower had mentioned and Carrie had mentioned and so many others in the film, is about focusing now the energies on Earth and finding solutions here, and that we in turn as a collective, as a consciousness, can change the outcome in future events. So
yeah,
Frank
exactly.
would probably do a really good job in encapsulating the summary, the actual synopsis of the film in a quick paragraph for us.
Is that what you wanted, the synopsis of the film or the synopsis of the book, Alternative 3?
Oh, no.
Sort of encapsulated into one.
The Packing from Mars synopsis, yeah, really, it is like, imagine yourself being a normal person living in society and with an open mind suddenly learning that there's this potential off-world colony on Mars, and the idea never lets you go, and you really want to find out for yourself, is this possible? So what do? You know, you look up the addresses of people who are willing to talk to you about their experiences on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you look up scientists who can try and make sense of it for you in terms of whether it's even possible. And on the other hand, you want to go to locations and see if maybe, you know, what's happened in these locations, if there's traces or remnants of what happened there that's left over in our day and age. Because often, you know, you hear things from people, and if you're an open-minded and willing and a believer, let's say, you often take things for granted because it resonates with you or you feel it's right. But how often do you get a chance to go out, actually to go and verify for yourself if it's really there? And it's the same thing that happens, like even in our modern day, when we hear about what's going on in the Middle East with Syria or war and stuff, we think that there's all these bad people over there. But you know, if you go over there, you find that there's a lot of cool Arabs that are just like you and I, that are shaking their heads at the authorities and going, "What the heck is going on?" And they're making this bad image for us in the world when we're all just brothers and sisters, right? So that was it. Part of me, like, just wanted to go out there in the world and connect with my fellow brothers and sisters, and I didn't want to make a film that like pit one person up against the other person. I just wanted them to let their story come through. Hence, it's become much more of an artistic film where I wanted to supplement those statements with things that you would not normally see. Like we have Duncan Afinian talking about, you know, his experience in the Mars program and remote and the remote viewing experiences that Miranda was going through. So I thought it would be really cool to show them in a setting that they would not normally would be shown in. So they're walking through the field of grass, and it has this feeling of the gladiator more. It has this more like homecoming, this safe place, or this place in between our worlds where they're safe to discuss it. And I wanted the film to be this kind of a safe place for people to discuss these things.
And just to preface Duncan O'Finian, this is MK Ultra, this is Super Soldier. I mean, it really was an extraordinary adventure. It was an extraordinary road trip journey where we went out and we went to these clandestine locations. The locations we could go to and we could validate, we did. We filmed on a camera that looked like a still camera. A lot of times we were filming covertly. When we weren't doing active interviews with participants, we were covertly filming. And we went out to the public. We were knocking on random strangers' doors saying, "Hey, have you heard of this place? Do you know of that experiment that may have taken place at such and such time?" We were walking into ghost towns, and it was really interesting that over time we were finding all of these collaborative and corroborating stories of people we were meeting, strangers off the street, and that combined just with the research that we had done was all putting together pieces to the puzzle. One of the things that Frank mentioned was the cinematic approach to this film, and it's true. We wanted to take a different approach. We not only wanted to make it artistic and cinematic. Frank, this has been, you know, with the music and the approach to camera and everything, he's put all of these different talents into creating this beautiful film. And one of the approaches that we took is, here we are. You know, we've got 16 presenters in this film, 16 extraordinary presenters in this film. Some of their stories are unbelievable. I mean, we were sitting there like at the foot of the masters saying, is this really fathomable?
Did they just say that?
Did they just say that?
You know,
but, you know, in the end, as filmmakers, it's our job to be completely neutral. It's our job to sit there with a camera and be storytellers. We're storytellers. We're not sitting here to be a judge. We're not sitting here to decipher or filter the information. We're here simply to listen.
And to document it for the future.
One of the approaches that we took from a camera and a cinematic standpoint was, I mean, the eyes are the windows to the soul, right? So if you're going to film someone, get right up into their eyes. Get right into their face. And so Frank, a lot of his camera angles and a lot of his framing were really close so that we could get a personal perspective, a private and intimate perspective into the lives of these presenters. And I think that helps with even disseminating and discerning the information, because we can there be with them with the story, and it was all intentional.
What's the movie release date? When was it? Is it set yet?
Well, we did a limited release on November 30th, and we're still going through theatrical and film festivals. We've got several events coming up. We're going to be at the International UFO Congress in February. We're going to be at Conscious Life Expo in February. We're going to be in Australia and Nexus. We've got a lot of upcoming events. We're in several film festivals. So we haven't gone officially released yet. We hope to be on Amazon at some point. We're slowly getting the screenings out there, but our limited release on Real House was in November.
Is it going to be released in major theaters as well afterwards, or?
Well, we thought that if we put it onto a limited platform like the way we have it on Real House, we would be able to expose the film to decision makers that may be able to help us get it into those venues. It would be great to have this film in theaters because it really is a film made for cinema. It's the formatting for cinema. The imagery is very theater-like, so it doesn't really do it justice watching it on a small screen.
We did a fantastic screening at one of the oldest theaters in the world called the Mozart Kino in Austria, in Salzburg, Austria. It was fantastic. And to see it there on the big screen in a theater setting the film really lends itself to that. It's letterbox, it's widescreen, it's, you know, the full Dolby surround sound. It's a great experience. And for those that were at Contact in the Desert, we screened it in Joshua Tree on an outdoor cinema, which was really an interesting, unique situation. It was crazy.
But I guess it's my urgency to want to get it out there that I think pushed it out this year, because, like you mentioned, it's the year of Mars, and I was itching to get it out because it's been, you know, it's been 5 years, right? So literally 5 years to the day that I got off the airplane after filming Carrie and Bill and having met Tonia. We screened it in Salzburg at probably the oldest cinema theater in the country, if not the world.
But Mars is a hot topic now. You know, you've got NASA coming out. At the exact time we were releasing, NASA's coming out saying, hey, there's water on the surface, and they're admitting publicly that there's water on the surface of Mars. Ridley Scott launching his movie with Matt Damon, you know, The Martian. We had all of these events happening and media blitzes happening, and we've had an incredible publicity just on the limited release that we've had. You know, Italy, for one, got behind this in a huge way. We played on mainstream Italy and Italian news.
Yeah, exactly. There was a conference in Italy, and I was asked to come and speak at it. And it was actually in the Ministry of Defense, the NATO headquarters of Italy, right there. We were in that building. It was really crazy giving this presentation.
Nick Pope was there.
Nick Pope was there, and there was a scientist there was a translator for the Vatican there who was talking about how he was doing the literal translations of the scriptures. It was quite a fascinating place, but there was a great interest there right off the bat. And it was very interesting to do the presentation without having to show the film to anybody.
The Vatican is very much involved in some type of disclosure right now, because I interviewed Victor Vigiani, who told me about the Jesuit chief director of the American Jesuits Society, and they put together some type of agency for disclosure in California, I think in Berkeley, and the Vatican came up, you know, put together the chronovisor. So let's not forget that was recouped.
Well, that was a Vatican insider who approached, you know, Cristoforo Barbato, who was the person who passed along the information to Lucas Gantamburlu for his research. So there is a inside the Vatican secret programs, there's a desire to get this information out there about what they found, because I think this is coming from a person who probably sees the information and feels a connection to the rest of humanity and doesn't feel comfortable not telling the rest of us of something which is potentially going to affect all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is going to affect all of us, but what I see is that NASA has been smudging artifacts and lunar bases, ancient sites on the Moon, on Mars, on various planets, and even downgraded Pluto, not to be a planet anymore, which makes the new so-called planet that they've discovered recently the 9th planet, and it should be the 10th planet.
Right.
You mentioned Nibiru and Planet X in the movie. Several speakers actually mentioned it. What do you think about this whole topic? Do you believe, well, after the Marduk, ancient Greek god of Mars, being mentioned as well in the movie, and we all know, well, some of us know about the Anunnaki story. I actually hosted myself, Neil Freer and Sasha Lessen, who were the last of Sitchin's disciples, and they told us about this whole story. You think there's some valid point being made about this planet Nibiru as coming back every 3,600 years to our solar system, throughout our solar system? Is there some type of celestial object capable of doing so in our solar system? And this year it seems like NASA is not able to hide as much as they used to. And do you think this is the last question? Do you think this is due to the higher vibration which you expose in Solar Revolution in your movie, the previous movie, about the vibration coming from this cosmic wave and also from the sun, that actually raises vibration for every living being and sentient being on the planet, which is the consciousness, consciousness awakening that we're hoping for.
Well, I think Nibiru is a subject which a lot of people have covered, and there's a lot of theories and a lot of interesting data from researchers about it. When I first approached Lucas Gantamburlu, it was actually in regards to the Apollo 20 missions, because he'd written a book about that. And when we started to get into conversation, I realized that he was actually had a lot of information about this so-called Planet X, and that was coming from the Vatican. So in the spirit of the novel Alternative 3, of course, and the idea that somebody would set up a survival colony on the planet Mars, it was important to consider all of the alternatives of things that could be coming at us, which I was mentioning earlier: overpopulation, global warming, pollution, or a mysterious body, or a comet, or all these things. So Nibiru was an important piece of that, and it was also very prevalent in a lot of people's minds in terms of being something which could create a lot of fear. Now, the Vatican, as far as I understand it, the Vatican has a very great interest in this planet, because the Vatican has information locked away in its cellars that talk about these great cycles, these long cycles in history that have happened. And it's no mystery that, and it's not that kind of like it's not really something you have to believe in terms of magic to think that there could be another planetary influence on our solar system that comes through. It's written in the history books, and in the story of Packing from Mars, of course, what led to the investigation of Planet X was the anomaly in the course of the Pioneer space probe, which caused them to theorize that some mysterious gravitational influence must have been the cause of that, which led them to send out the probes to try and film it and try and actually capture data about it. It's interesting to note that the telescopes that the Vatican has been using and developing are not located in the in the regular latitudes of the planet, but actually on the extreme north and south pole, which is searching and pointing in directions which most astronomers or amateur astronomers, let's say, never really peer at or get a chance to look at.
Right.
So the other aspect is that it's interesting to note that as this planet was discovered in the 80s, there was all kinds of information about it, and all kinds of astronomers were talking about this mysterious body, and they pretty much nailed it down to this is coming. And then suddenly, it's really crazy, a lot of them just disappeared. There was no more talk about this mysterious body, which major astronomers were proclaiming to be a reality. In fact, when I was doing my presentation in Italy, I had a whole list of astronomers around the planet which had suddenly strange accidents. They would have weird car accidents, or they'd have strange embolisms and die suddenly of heart attacks, and mysteriously, like really not just one or two, but dozens began, and these happened to be those astronomers which were supportive of the idea that there could be this body coming at us.
It's interesting, like Frank said, where they're observing from the North Pole and the South Pole, and you have the South Pole telescope, known as the SPT, and it observes this area in the infrared spectrum, going back to your question, Mark. And tying back into solar revolution, you know, we talk about this black hole in Sagittarius A, and everything in our universe heating up, all the planets heating up. There's celestial events that are transpiring, and our electromagnetic field is changing. Our solar activity is changing what's happening on this planet and everything around us in the field. Giuliana Conforto was a physicist, an astrophysicist actually, that was one of the presenters in Solar Revolution. She just did an incredible, extraordinary review on Packing for Mars. And she shows this image, which everybody should go and check out. I saw it for the first time when she presented in Munich last year. But in the infrared, ultraviolets, and I believe gamma ray spectrums, I'm not a physicist, so I don't know all the spectrums in which they actually captured this. You can see a new Earth that's forming. It means that we live in this third-dimensional reality, just as with this, you know, as Frank said, you've got these ancient texts and all of these previous eras where this planetary body flies through. But this is just dealing within the third-dimensional reality. We are seeing now in these other spectrums, whether it's infrared, gamma, ultraviolet, these different spectrums that are beyond our visible light spectrum, that in fact something else exists, and even the Earth is changing. And you can see this, they can record this, they have photographed this, and it's phenomenal. So
it could mean that this recurring cycle that has had historically very chaotic effects upon the planets which it approaches may not actually have the same effect, let's say, this time around because of a frequency change that's taking place in our galaxy. So, like Tonia was saying, one of the ideas that we really couldn't get into so much was timelines and alternative timelines. So, you know, although it's, you know, on the one hand, it's math and mathematics, and there's a body, and it could be coming at us, and I think it's irresponsible not to talk about this if it indeed is coming. Yet on the other hand, it's also important to keep an open mind that frequencies that are approaching our planet right now and mingling with our DNA are altering our consciousness, could lead to us actually not being affected by it whatsoever.
You know, it's funny that these, well, when we were filming Solar Revolution, not to get on another film topic, we actually reached out to BBC to get permission to use some footage in this film. And the footage was about our telecommunication systems. If we had a massive flare, if we had another Carrington event, what would happen to this Earth? I mean, we're all dependent now on the satellite systems. We're all dependent on telecommunications and the internet and Wi-Fi. Even our cars that we drive is connected to the net. It's connected. Everything runs on this electrical system. And yet, they would not allow us. They would not give us permission to use this BBC footage. Why? Because in Solar Revolution, we bring up the probability and the subject of the fact that every living human being on this planet is a walking, talking, breathing satellite. We are antennas. And if they're all concerned and putting out the APBs that if we have a solar flare or something major happens on this planet, we have the biggest CME ever, that our satellite systems are going to go down, well, guess what? If it affects the grid and affects the satellites, it's affecting you.
Right.
But we've never talked about how. And we've never talked about what happens then.
Yeah,
we are electrical. We're not chemical. When we go to the doctors and we go to the medical community, they're trying to treat people chemically. We're not chemical beings. We're electrical beings, and we're influenced by electrical signals. And so if our electromagnetic field changes and the planetary structures change and particles are coming at us from the cosmos, we're affected by that electrically.
Or DNA is.
And that's a very interesting thing to consider when like Frank was saying, we don't know the changes that this other planetary object could influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then our DNA is greatly affected.
Now.
Our DNA is greatly affected by it, and some activation is taking place. We can talk about DNA strands and so forth, but the fact that those two planets, the Earth and Mars, are so tightly connected together in past history and in various writings, ancient texts that we can go through, archaeological sites, pyramids on Mars and on the Earth. Do you think there are actually living beings on Mars other than the secret human colonies? I know I've interviewed Randy Kramer myself, and he talked about the various ET beings on there, insectoids, humanoids, and reptilians. But you yourself, among the interviews that you've led and shot, and you must have hours of footage actually on each of the speakers. Have they mentioned some civilizations, being settled and still present and living on Mars?
Well, it's interesting that the actual contact with Mars, let's say, natives, goes back over 100 years to when Nikola Tesla experienced this light ray from the surface of Mars, which was picked up and verified around the globe by other respected scientists of the day. So there seems to be evidence going back over a century that some kind of civilization was trying to make a connection, or was possibly, who knows what the light ray was symbolizing. Maybe it was something else and we just happened to see it. Nikola Tesla happened to see it and talk about it. But it's something that I didn't really think it was possible to explore the theme of what kind of beings might be on the surface of the planet awaiting us, except it's interesting to note that once we published the film, we were approached by an individual, we can't mention his name, but he has direct information from somebody who was involved in developing some of the secret technologies, who verified that in the 1970s there had been a colony established already that was setting up bases which would be there now if we were to return to Mars, as they're now giving us in the public statement sometime in the next 30 or 40 years, that they would be greeted by when they landed there. So those would be the one form of the natives which are there now. The other form of the natives, if Randy Kramer's story is really interesting about the, what does he say, the mantis beings? There's mantis beings, and there's... Exactly, and to my understanding, these beings don't live on the surface. They live below the surface, due to the fact that as you know in the film, we talked to one extraterrestrial who relates the story of the history of the planet Mars dating back some over 12,000 years back, on how the planet was basically sucked dry of its atmosphere due to these cosmic influences. Now, I think it's something which is worth a film probably all on its own to go into what is there now, what could be there. And it's also interesting to note that there's a NASA officer, Catherine Connolly, who was in charge of keeping Mars uncontaminated. So those areas of the surface of Mars which are actually habitable or potentially could support life as we know it are off limits. So it's interesting that all the rovers and all the pictures we get are this dry, deserted, barren, wind-struck area when there could be lush areas of the planet Mars which are completely able to be supportive.
My mind is spinning as Frank is talking, because when we talk about underneath the surface, you know, we did Stranger at the Pentagon. And Craig talked all about this with the planet Venus and what's underground there. I had the wonderful opportunity of working with Jose Escamilla, and Jose was one of our presenters in Packing for Mars. We got so much footage from him, and prior to making Packing for Mars, I collaborated with him on UFO Greatest Forever Denied and Moon Rising and Celestial, and now his new release, UFOs from Outer Space, and he's a plethora of information. And there are all these anomalies and structures even on the moon leading up to Mars. And I know we brought in even some of the brief footage from Buzz Aldrin when he talks about Phobos. And then J.J. Hurtak came in and corroborated a lot of this story, and bringing in Krita Mutwa, shaman down in Africa, showing the pyramids. There are so many structures here that directly correlate with structures out there in our solar system.
And it's the physical, this is the physical evidence that we're used to seeing, but we really have to open ourselves up to the idea and the fact that we live in a multi-dimensional reality, that we only perceive a very, very minute, like 0.5% of the matter that's out there is what we perceive. So there's multiple dimensions of people and beings out there. So what's on Mars may not, what we see in the physical may only be a very, very small portion of the reality of what is there, of the life that is there. And not just Mars, but other planets like Tonia was saying, like Venus, or perhaps, you know, Jupiter, some of the moons.
Which, as we're talking right now, all 5 planets, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus are all lined up. Isn't it cool? So we might be sitting in Mercury retrograde right now, but we got 5 planets aligned on our side, so that's really nice.
It's disclosure time, I guess.
Exactly, and I think a lot more of the people coming forward, whistleblowers, are. It's interesting to notice how they're bringing in more of the topic of multiple dimensions, multidimensional reality. I mean, Burkhard Heim, a famous German physicist who we talk about in Solar Revolution, as you know, laid out the mathematics for a 12-dimensional universe, and it's math that has not been disputed to this day. In fact, a lot of the math behind his calculations was later taken by NASA to develop alternative propulsion systems way back in the 40s and 50s. So, I mean, he was a very, very critical person, and a lot of his work has gone unnoticed simply because it's so powerful that it's just, hard for people to grasp the idea of an 8-dimensional or a 12-dimensional universe. What does that mean? How does that relate to my life? We're so busy in society trying to integrate. We go to school, we get an education to fit one of the existing models and patterns of job structures and income structures that are out there, only to support and stabilize the society we live in. And if everyone were to open their minds up to all the other potentials, I think a lot of the keepers of the gates would be paranoid, and you can see that the way they're using the mainstream media, they can categorically deny these other realities because there's an embargo on this kind of information simply for the idea of maintaining a solid, stable society structure out there.
Yeah, it's the main secret, actually, among other secrets. Like we've experienced quite our share of false flag events in France last year, and I don't think this is going to stop. And this is all to maintain the ongoing warmongering efforts and to bind down our civil liberties and civil. Yes, and that's the issue I wanted to bring up as far as this, the motivation behind this group that is colonizing Mars in order to supposedly preserve the human race. But what human race? Augmented individuals, super soldiers, politicians' families. If we base ourselves on this group of that we call predators, because that's what they do, profit at all costs is their main motivation, and slavery in modern years. We can tell from the Georgia Guidestones, for example, but there's other stones that are saying, right where it's written, that they want to, this Illuminati cabal wants to bring down population to, I don't know, 500 million, I think, on Earth.
Well, this is alternative. One of the alternatives in the novel Alternative 3. Alternative 1 is population reduction.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself, like, how visionary was Leslie, right? Alternative 1, reducing the population, right? Alternative 2, go underground and save people in vast underground cities and colonies. Well, both of those topics are no longer strange in our day. They've been very strange 40 years ago, but now in our day and age, we've had so much information about underground activity, and we've had so much information that leads people to think that there could be some kind of a strange. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm willing to believe there's an actual concerted plan to depopulate us, but if you can't help coming across this information about all these massive amounts of, like, coffins and things and camps that they've built and stuff that are sitting in the middle. They're waiting for something. I'm not sure I'm willing to believe that they're going to actually go through and mass exterminate us, but it could be that something happens that they have no other choice but to try and deal with what happens, and then that's the primitive way that they know how to deal with it, because they're not opening themselves up to altered dimensions and alternate realities and higher vibrations and things like that, higher frequencies.
If you look up at the whistleblowers in the geoengineering programs and the artificial intelligence field, which is really coming forward and push forward to over us, as opposed to the naturally connected individual or human being, everything is being fomented in order to create some artificial or AI dependent human being today. At least in the Western world, well, wherever they can. Google can get their hands on. Sorry, Google, and hope they don't.
Careful. We don't want to lose the connection here.
And I'm saying this because we had our first. Google had their first implant party in Paris a few months ago. So that's why I'm saying
it's interesting that you're bringing this all up, Mark, because you're touching on dangerously close material that some of our next possible future projects may be based on.
Yeah, that's the direction.
We won't disclose more at this point, but it's interesting that you're bringing it up.
If we ever make another film, it's probably going to touch exactly what you're talking about.
Good. Well, I have some sources if you want some information from this end. What I was going to ask before I go to the Apollo programs, because I interviewed Edgar Mitchell myself, and he for the first time admitted on my show, and I translated into French, that he saw UFOs in space. That was the first time officially that he admitted it, and he also admitted that fellow astronauts had footage of strange structures on the moon, on the dark side of the moon. He didn't say ET or human, but he said some maybe exogenous structures, so bases, on the dark side of the moon. So we don't know if they're human or ET bases or from somewhere else. I want to ask if your movie was going to be subtitled in French, so we can broadcast it over here, or in Quebec, or in Belgium, or.
Well, as soon as you send us that transcript, Mark, we'll be happy to lay that up there.
The challenge is, we did Solar Revolution in German, and we dubbed it also in French. With Packing from Mars, it just wouldn't do it justice, I think, putting subtitles. I mean, that would be our last resort. We really would want to dub it. I think it needs to be dubbed.
Because it's a visual film.
It's a very visual, very complex, and it's quite packed full of information. It's a type of film similar to Solar Revolution that you have to watch more than once. And I think it's a kind of film that we really need to do a dubbing on. With Solar Revolution, we didn't have quite as many participants, and we were able to achieve it a little quicker. Right now, we've been focused on the U.S. market with Packing for Mars and getting it released in the U.S. and Australia and U.K. markets. I would love to get it in French. I would love to get it in German. I'd love to have it in Spanish. It's something that we are considering. As to when, not sure yet. But maybe we'll be reaching out to you, Mark, and you can assist us in that transcript Frank just mentioned.
Yes, because I was approached by a Scandinavian production company. Well, the production company in Paris, the office for the Scandinavian movie director, what's his name, who directed and produced The Visit, and I don't know if you know him.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, when we did when we did our Mozart Kino screening, that's who we teamed up with, The Visit.
Yeah, we were featured with The Visit that week for World Space Week. That's how we got into
we were featuring at World Space Week.
There you go. And so they approached me in order to have some movie theaters in my region and Normandy where it could be presented, you know. And so afterwards we'd have like an hour or so debate on ET encounter or close encounters, and why not? And it's gonna come up in February, so I'm looking forward to it as well. And I'd love to do it with Packing for Mars.
Absolutely.
We can do it.
We're willing to do it if your audience can hear English. We did an English screening here in Germany, and we had a really good turnout. So
sure, I'd love to do the voiceover for Frank's voice. French, why not? And yeah, my next question was going back to the Apollo programs, because yeah, I feel concerned because I had Edgar Mitchell on my show. That was the first. I'm the only I think French UFO researcher who actually interviewed him. And of course, I asked him the question, if I remember correctly, about the Apollo 20 mission and about the Mona Lisa. And of course, this is a regular astronaut response answer. No, this was a fake. It never existed, never took place. And what can you tell us about what led to the Apollo 20 mission and the I guess Luca Scantaburlo testimony and his book Apollo 20 Disclosure, where we see, you know, the shipwreck and the Mona Lisa body and triangular shaped structures and objects on Mars. I saw his testimony. It was pretty interesting. Why is the Clementine mission so how would I put it? The regular NASA and astronauts who don't want to open up to this mission say it's all fake, and there's some fake footage, as you say in the movie, added on to the real footage. So it's just like sort of like the you know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you know, the people that put that information out there. And this is, you know, something that I talk with Luca a lot about. It's obviously there's been some contamination, but to date, to my knowledge, there's been no credible person has come forward and presented any proof as to how they faked it. And so it's easier to just debunk something as fake than it is to maybe take a different perspective, which is the one that we took in the film, is that the people who experience these things, they cannot tell, they cannot talk about it, but they want to leave the breadcrumbs out there for the rest of us to pick up and for the future, so that we can basically look at what's there, analyze it, put it into the record, just like you would in a court case, and eventually, you know, the court will decide or determine what really happened, in the best case, of course. So it's very interesting that these astronauts who came out with this information, retired AFB being one of them, were speaking with Luca, and he was the only person that they actually had direct communication with, and they were saying that they needed to, they needed to put this information out there because they felt it was something that was going to honor a lot of the astronauts in the program which never see the day of light. So we hear of the Neil Armstrongs and the Buzz Aldrins, but actually there were many military astronauts involved in the program that were actually the ones that were doing a lot of the exploration, a lot of the dangerous work, and they are completely out of the limelight and not acknowledged. Now, and the other thing you have to ask yourself is, why would, in the time of a Cold War, when the Russians were standing off against the Americans, and they were trying to tell us that the Apollo program was too expensive to carry on, why would they spend what it must have been, in today's money, equivalent to hundreds of millions in retrofitting each of their spacecraft, which were incompatible at the time, so that they could link up on the other side of the moon, just for an orbit around the moon, a friendly handshake. Let's spend a few billion so we can shake our hands in space and say, "Wow, cool." But nobody really knows about that Apollo mission. I mean, most people think there was no Apollo 18, and there was no Apollo, certainly not 19, and certainly not 20. But the story that's interesting about them is that 19. One of the things that we don't mention in the film is that when Apollo 19 went wrong, and 19 was based on going on a reconnaissance mission to try and excavate what they photographed, what the anomalies were that they had photographed from 15 forward, which we show in the film. But when 19 went wrong, they had to find a way to rescue these people. And actually, it was interesting. There's a whole untold story about Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong back on Earth. In these, they had exact duplicates of the spacecraft on Earth with all the exact instrumentation, so that they could step by step take all the astronauts that were out there through the process of helping them to save the situation and somehow return safely to Earth. And that's exactly what happened. That's what's really cool about the footage, where you see like little traces, like one frame of Apollo 11, and the voice of Apollo 15, and all these characters and all of their roles are somehow encapsulated in this footage. And you can only say to yourself that whoever faked this footage, let's say whoever put this footage together based on real footage to create a composite, was trying to tell us something in code, in a deep code. And this code is what we're still trying to decipher, and we felt it was important in Packing for Mars, because we talked about this, because a lot of people have dismissed that footage, but we didn't feel the last word was said on that footage. And I think Luca really was happy that we would put that out there.
One of the disinformation techniques is exactly that. They take authentic footage and mix it in with inauthentic footage, and then it's human nature. We look at it and we throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, how many people discredit like a simple thing like crop circles because a couple guys went out there with the boards? And it's human nature, at least for the masses, to look at any sort of
anomalous events as being explainable. But this is the cognitive dissonance that we're living through.
Cognitive dissonance is a big
which
deal.
is why that was an important other theme in the film, is cognitive dissonance. What is that, and why is it, and how does it affect society?
We never say definitively in the movie one way or the other. I just think that we really all need to look at this, and we need to look at it in a space of neutrality and visit it again, because there's a lot of unexplained anomalies out there, unexplained aspects out there, especially with regards to these Apollo missions. I mean, even the Project Red Sun has really never been explored. Lucas Cantaberlo was a big information avenue for us when we put together, and we were very fortunate to get him. We were considering the film already done. We were in post-production. We were minutes before wanting to release the film, and then it was this opportunity arose to interview Luca. And that
was one of those things that came in late in the film, where I was looking at all the information, and now I'd been working on this for, starting with in 2010, and there's been various timelines and various, stories being told, but every time you come back to it and visit, some time had gone by, and this last piece somehow was it just felt like it was the missing link that tied so much of the whole story together with Alternative 3. because there was so much stuff here to look at that you just couldn't ignore it. You had to basically put it together. And the problem is a lot of this information is put out in isolated form, so when you see it on YouTube or whatever and somebody proclaims it to be a fake, it's quickly tossed aside, it's debated for a while, but we need to look at the big picture. And this was one of the biggest objectives for Packing for Mars, is to kind of tie a lot of these different threads together and connect the dots so that we can look at it as a whole. You know, it might turn out that the film was only a stepping stone to deciphering the true history of humans' interaction with Mars and the true space program. Maybe we'll find out what parts of the film turned out to be not right and what parts of the film turned out to be actually only the beginning of a much bigger picture. So this is the fascinating part about when you do a film like this. It's like a time capsule.
Right. Didn't you have some footage of Buzz Aldrin on Mars at one point, I think, in the movie?
Yeah, there's a picture that Lucas Gantenburlo was given, which shows supposedly Buzz Aldrin on the surface of the Mars in 1970.
You know what's very interesting, and we discovered this later after we released Packing for Mars. In fact, just recently, our associate producer, executive producer actually, was in Australia and went to Buzz Aldrin's presentation. He's doing live presentations right now globally, and he went to one of these events, and it's incredible. It's called Mission to Mars, and it's apparently a fantastic live show. I've never been to it, but James L. Stewart, our executive producer, was at this event, and Buzz is actually pushing people to go to Mars. I mean, it's really wild.
It's like he knows something.
It's really
and he can't really say it. You know, I mean, I'll just, you know, posit that, right?
There's one of Buzz Aldrin's interviews on CNN once, and he mentioned the word Mars instead of the moon like twice or three times during the interview, like he did it on purpose, but you know, tongue slip, but you know, on purpose.
And
you know,
huge on this monolith on purpose.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, I think a lot of them get really angry when you say that they weren't on, that the whole Apollo missions were faked and all this stuff, and that they weren't on the moon. But I think it's an interesting idea to consider. Yeah, maybe Buzz and Neil weren't on the moon. Maybe they were actually on Mars. You know, and while everyone was like, well, it's like a magician doing a trick. He's waving his hand over here, and you're looking at it, and you're thinking, oh, that's Neil and Buzz up on the moon. But actually, you know, they're way over there somewhere else doing something completely different. Because if the timeline is true in that picture of 1970, then it really was somebody else who was on the moon. You know, perhaps Neil and Buzz were there much earlier in a different time frame that we're being told.
Yeah, and that's what all the former SSP Secret Space Program whistleblower are saying anyway. But there's a big technological gap between what was shown officially and the technology they had at their disposal. You know, from the 60s and on after World War II, actually. What's his name? The Lockheed Martin Skunk Works engineer. I interviewed Michael Schratt, who interviewed a guy who talked to him on his bed, his last moments alive, actually, before he passed away. What was his name? You know, the Lockheed Martin engineer. I forgot his name. Anyway, he mentioned that, you know, they were at least 50 years ahead of what was being shown. You know. And way beyond. I mean,
absolutely. That's one of the things Jose Escamilla said in the interview I had with him, and he said they're like 50 years ahead of us. What they're giving us is throw-off technology, and you have to consider a lot of other things. Like I was when I was living in Canada in the 80s, a friend of mine was involved in renovating buildings, and he would buy up an old house and he would tear the walls out and he would reconstruct it and sell it for a profit. And during one of these projects of his, he opened up a wall, and inside the wall he found like blueprints, huge, you know, blueprints, like massive, that were depictions of some guy called Otis T. Carr in 1952, and it was an advertising it was a contest that was advertising people to basically take the schematics and build this what looks like an absolute flying saucer. And he already had created the engine, the innards that would be then placed inside, and it was proclaiming the new era of transportation. We no longer need to use carbon-based automobiles. We can now use these free-floating devices. and it had the greatest minds in science listed, and it was something that had obviously somebody had spent a lot of time and money putting this together, and this was no fake. This was real, and this was in the 50s. And and we now know that Otis T. Carr existed, and he was somebody who actually did create and develop this technology. Who was it that?
Ralph Ring.
Ralph Ring. Ralph Ring is somebody Tonia met, and he worked directly with Otis T. Carr, and it was great when she came to me and talked to me about this situation. And I mentioned to her that experience that I'd had with a friend of mine in Quebec with this blueprints that he'd found. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think what we're being shown on television and what we think is the technology that is the state of the art is far from the state of the art. Another example, we met an author in Germany who was, basically told us that his father was a psychiatrist in the 50s for computers.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine being a psychiatrist for HAL in the 50s. That shows you that there was stuff going on which was completely kept out of the public. And it makes sense, of course, and if you have this technology, and if the storyline of Val Thor and the whole visit at the White House and the Pentagon has any basis in fact, then you have to concede that there seems to have been a breakaway point, and that's what we talk about in the film, the breakaway civilization, where Eisenhower himself talks about this ever powerful and growing military-industrial complex, which, if unchecked, would break away with this stuff and become a danger. Maybe they haven't become a danger more than the fact that they're distracting us with wars and false flag operations while they're busy flying to Mars and going in elevators to other planets. I mean, these are things that we have to consider, and we should try and provoke discussion about. And
when the missing budgets, the black budgets missing from the Pentagon between, I think it was 1990 and the late 80s and the late 90s, I think it was like 8,000 billions or something, or 8 million billions dollars.
Yes.
In a 13-year span window. I mean, it's just huge, and that's official. What's not unofficial is much worse. So what are they doing with it? What's the real objective behind the space militarization and those black projects? Because besides Mars colonies, I think we may have colonies all over the solar system. What do you think?
This is what I've heard David Wilcock talk about in some of his shows. He's talking about things that are even more far out than anything we talk about in Packing for Mars. Way to go, David.
And we haven't even got into the subject of time travel. We're just now talking about this timeline, this dimension, this reality. When you start involving aspects like time travel, which we go totally into with Packing for Mars, then you go way down the rabbit hole. And you introduce technologies and timelines and the whole 9 yards. It's a big Pandora
So you have
box.
to limit your window when you're making a film like this. You can't talk about it all or you'll lose people. So one of the things we learned working for a commercial television station was that find the story and stick to the story and bring it home. You can't branch off indefinitely and never bring it to any place where it has some kind of a solid, line.
Although when we're talking about branching off, I mean, we could have branched off in so many avenues with Packing for Mars. Like Alan Steinfeld offering us the footage an interview he did with David Anderson. And David Anderson having this device called the time warp generator, where they're literally manipulating time and space. And literally taking a rose and in real time pulling it back into a bud, and having witnesses and scientists watching this happen, and taking seeds and sending them forwards and backwards in time to watch the process and the germination. This is crazy.
He's talking about a whole industry which
Yeah.
is being developed by some of the leading countries like Japan and India and Russia that have actually developed commercial time travel devices which they give to their military so that they can, send the plans of battle plans backwards and forwards in time. They can even use time to hide plans.
Time travel program.
Which is something that Andrew Bishago talks about, them using time to actually hide the existence of these time travel and teleportation programs.
You know, Ernst Sinkowski, we were so fortunate to be able to interview him because he passed not long after we did his interview. He was so excited about this film. He kept in touch with us. He was very vibrant. He was very excited for the release, and he literally passed just months before we were able to go out to the world with it. You know, he, with his information that he came forward with the chronovisor, I mean, that was like sitting, and to understand and to grasp what this technology can do. This chronovisor can peer into timelines, and it doesn't just peer into a timeline. It can go back into the timeline and record footage. And the weird thing is, it's like microfilm. It records like a black and white image of like an echo in time. It's like they could go back in time and literally, like a camera, record an event, only it's black and white, not like color in real time. And then to prove that the technology was legitimate, or that they were capturing something that was valid, they went back to sync points, like anchor points in that timeline. So they went back to like Mussolini's speech, for instance, and they would record this speech at that point in time in this black and white footage. And then we have textbooks, we have text, we have the speech printed out, and they would compare the speech to see if it was authentic.
I think they even went back to Plato's day, and
even Plato,
there was missing parts of some play that he'd written.
And Jesus,
but they were able to validate.
And they went back and they filmed the crucifixion.
Right.
They were able to validate sync points.
And they can go forward in time. That's the other thing too. They can go forward in time as well.
They can go forwards and backwards. And when we start getting into this, it's like trying to wrap your mind around quantum physics.
But it makes you realize that, you know, what we learned about from Michael Persinger and by filming Solar Revolution, which is another example of where we had hours of cool footage that we couldn't include.
Hours and hours.
But he was talking a lot about the impressions that we make by when we think, we resonate and we project energy from our bodies and from our brains and from our voices, and this is actually imprinted in the magnetosphere of the planet for permanent, you know. So all this, everything that's ever been thought, said, done, is stored in this massive cloud of information. It's
like a scientific description of the Akashic. I mean, the Akasha really is like what we know today as being the cloud.
And it's
and everything's imprinted
mathematically.
And collectively we can all tap into this field.
Yeah, if you had the tools and the means to do it, you could do it. You know, and I think some of the better and more sensitive psychics, this is what they're tuning into. They're tuning into this existing field, and they're bringing that information into this dimension from another dimension. But it's really all out there, and there's tools that the chronovisor was one of them, and who knows, you know, Ernst Sinkowski talks about it in the film, and he basically says the Vatican seized it, and to his knowledge, it vanished. But we all know from other corroborating witnesses and whistleblowers that this technology didn't just vanish. It was further developed. And
well, the Vatican is like Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Exactly. They probably got crates and crates and crates all stored in wooden boxes in the warehouse of the underground. Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why more people don't just get together and barnstorm. I mean, there's so many more of us, right? How many of them? If like 100,000 people just descended and said, "We're getting down in that basement now. We want to see this shit."
I'm signing up for that expedition for sure.
The chronovisor, I think, is used. You have to pinpoint or focus on one person, right? One living being at one point in history to get to it, right? In the past, that's what I heard. The way it actually functions. To go back to the timeline tempering and tweaking, Randy Kramer actually told me that there's a super secret agency that messes with timelines inside the secret space program. So they do have agents, but it's so secret he didn't know anything about it or didn't recall anything about it. But I'm sure there's some agents that are mission to change things on the timeline that under command of I don't know whom, but well, right now I don't know if it's positive or negative, but we avoided a few times a World War III last year, so I hope it goes that way this year.
Well, yeah, it's a complex subject with time, because a lot of people say that if you go and change the time in the past, you could eliminate, yourself in the future. But
right.
from what we've really been learning is it doesn't really quite work that way, because time doesn't really exist. So what's happening is that it's either they're not traveling really in time, they're traveling interdimensionally. And what they might be doing is actually tuning into one of these other parallel frequencies, which are running simultaneous to all of us living right now. All time and all space is right here with us all the time. So, to use a pun, but essentially they're jumping between these dimensions. So time is like a bubble, and time is something that we as souls have invented to create linear experience, cause and effect, so that we can draw conclusions, have experiences, and do experiments in consciousness. But in itself, time actually is very personal. It's it's a sequence of events that you yourself construct through your own personal vision and your own personal senses in front of you.
Right, but linear time is also some type of prison for the lords of karma to imprison us into this revolving cycles of reincarnations to push us back into this reality, so they can actually feed off of our emotions. That's also another theory, that goes around with
talking about the archons.
Right, exactly, right. With the Earth as a prison planet, which I've interviewed many contactees, and some of them through hypnosis or consciously have told me about those experiences with those archons in the afterlife or in the in-between life, and that's pretty stunning material. So it looks like the karma is a trap, somehow. And that's why linear time has been created in order to keep us inside this reality, so that we can keep feeding those archons, actually.
Well, we addressed that at the very end of the film, actually. Who are the archons?
Right.
Did you catch that?
There was a call, the telephone call. I don't want to be a spoiler.
We don't want to give it away, but
it all goes down in Las Vegas, and this is all the archon. It's interesting because our last film with Dieter Burrows, who's best-selling author, German biophysicist Dieter Burrows, his most recent book was called Return to Eden.
Yes.
And Return to Eden expands on the Nag Hammadi text and the archon. Because time and space, as we all know, is an illusion. It's actually spherical. It's not linear at all.
Right.
The archons have been there alongside us the whole time.
Right.
But interestingly enough, we are all, I'll just put it this way, we are all in it together. We're in
a dance with them in a way.
That's for sure. Going back to the teleportation topic, for some of us who think that only the U.S. is involved in the secret space program, there's this former military guy who comes to my UFO events every few months, and he told us about this manual he found in the mid-'80s in his sergeant desk drawer. It was a teleportation manual in the mid-'80s in France. So, just going back to the military secret technology, France was as advanced in the mid-'80s because they had a teleportation manual in the military. So I think it's the G8 countries or G20 countries who are involved in the secret space program. What did your whistleblowers tell you? Did they mention France as well, or as being part of the?
Well, not directly, but I think France has always been very connected to the Grail, and the Grail symbolizes kind of the bloodline of Christ consciousness. So if you go into this theme of the archons and this dance that we're in, it seems like it's a polarity, and the the Grail line, the blood of the Grail, representing the bloodline of those who are here to evolve consciousness in the positive sense, versus those who are here as the mosquitoes on our back, sucking our blood to try and, you know, live on. We're each using each other in a certain way to evolve ourselves. And even though it may not be something which you know consciously, regardlessly of whether you know it conscious or you don't know it consciously, it's a reality. And I think that the greater picture is coming to a point now where we are enough people who are on either side of the fence are realizing that this is a game, this is a play, this is, like you said, this, what did you call it, a prison we've been pulled into here, that we're, you know, but it really isn't, because it's self-imposed prison. And in a way, you know how many times in your life you have a problem you're trying to solve and it seems unsurmountable and you almost want to give up, but what should you stick with it and solve the problem? You have this incredible boost after you've solved the problem that makes you realize, you know, how powerful you really are as a being. So, I mean, why should this be any different for things that are happening on the much more subtle levels, on the much more archonic levels or archaic levels, you know?
We all signed up to be here. We just didn't read the fine print.
Yeah.
That's before we get to the a free will. Do we really have access to our free will, or is our consent being tampered with? You know, are we presented things the way you know, in a way to convince us to come back here, or to incarnate here, or to be convinced that we chose to be here, or not? You know.
Well, I think that's part of the ego, right? I mean, the ego wants to be the manager. And for a long, long time, I think the ego tries to maintain control of this reality that we're living in, this particular dimension that we chose to experience in. So, I mean, it's hard to say where it's all going to end and why it's all happening, but free will, without free will, I think you would never be satisfied. It would be this sort of little voice on your shoulder that always said, well, what if I would have done this? You know, and instead, so it can never let you rest. So I think eternity could be symbolized in my perception. Eternity is a reality because we need to explore every single one of these little voices, and that's where multidimensional reality comes in. So there parallel timelines come in because we could jump timelines depending on our decisions.
There's a key theme that comes up in Solar Revolution, and that is that we should look at the world with the eyes of a child. And that eyes of a child is in a sense of innocence, but it's also in open-mindedness and curiosity. And that's how we went about filming Packing for Mars. It was going out there to seek and to learn and to explore. That's what life is really about. You don't get
a manual, right? Nobody gives you this manual to try and navigate through reality.
It's about going and finding the answers.
Imagine if you were in school and your teachers were telling you this kind of stuff about, like, hey, you know, you can make these decisions and they're going to cause this and they're going to cause that, and it's all okay, but it's all part of what your soul has to go through. You would probably look at life a lot differently, you know. But we tend to just not. I think we're getting to a place now, and I would like to believe that, you know, what we talked about in Solar Revolution, this raising of consciousness, is playing itself out in this way where those, maybe not everybody, but those people who are sensitive are starting to wake up to this idea that, you know, they're sharing these ideas with each other. They're talking about these ideas more, and it's causing this, like, exponential trip up of, you know, of the chaotic energy and turning it into positive energy. So this kind of tsunami of powerful and important knowledge and truth is coming at us. And it's going to hit those who are unconscious in a different way than it is those who are awake.
Right. Right. But this proportion of awoken, consciously awoken people on Earth, do you think it's going to reach a critical mass sometimes to make the ship tip over towards the light, or because a lot of people on Earth, I'm talking about millions. Even billions in some areas, in what we call the third world, won't have access to this information or disinformation. Actually, they're just some of them are just cattle for those oil profiteers and warmongers and the banksters and basically they don't know what's going on and don't have access to any information whatsoever. So some of them are more connected to the earth and to nature and to wilderness, and that's great. But it doesn't prevent all those mercenaries or those oil profiteers to go and create an ethnocide. That's what's going on. So where is too much information too much, and where is no information at all not enough to wake up? That's
more and more people, Mark, are seeking the truth. More and more people are out there looking for the truth and seeking for the truth, and they're digging to ask the great questions. Terry Cassidy and Bill Ryan were two fantastic individuals that went out there and really sought to bring the truth forward. They're like the pioneers. Yeah, they're like the pioneers, and we are so thankful for them to have us on the air now.
I mean, they're a perfect example of that it takes us only a very few amount of people who decide to take matters into their hands and have a massive effect on changing the course of history. I mean, those two probably actually changed the course, of history because of what they've done, and that's only two people.
Richard Dolan brought up a great comment in the trailer. Maybe Frank can recite it, but it's people need the truth. They're at a point now where they're waking up enough. They have the 9-to-5 job, the day-to-day rat race, party on the weekend. But people are waking up and they need the truth. And when people seek the truth, it's like when Frank set out on this journey, the one man with the backpack and the camera, the doors will open. The universe
opens the doors for fools wishing to know a secret.
That's right.
And it's just, I think that also I hold faith in, what we learned by working with Dieter Breurs is that indeed there is this pulse of energy coming from the center of our galaxy, to return to what we talked about earlier. And the frequencies coming at us, and the reason we put that part in the film with the whole DMT experience is not because we're condoning the use of drugs. We're explaining how the human brain has the capacity to produce these drugs, these psychotropic experiences based around serotonin and DMT and things that basically cross the blood-brain barrier. And these experiences give us glimpses into the other realities that are awaiting us. And I think the key here is the frequencies of 150 megahertz, which are the same as our DNA. And when we put two frequencies in harmony with each other, they resonate, and there's an exchange of information. So I hold out for the involuntary evolution after having worked with Dieter and stuff, so that we don't necessarily have to sit in meditation for hours and hours. We actually will make an evolutionary leap, much like what Michael Persinger talks about, when suddenly all around the globe people began writing language. There was a written form of language, or they began to speak.
One particle, one influx of that electromagnetic field can completely change our ability for language that Persinger talks about. It actually takes a lot of pressure off of humanity. I mean, we all obviously are in a state of evolution. We're growing, we're learning, we're expanding in not only a spiritual way, but emotional and mental beings. And all of that aside, what a great release it is to know that no matter what we believe in, no matter what framework we're conditioned in, no matter what, whether we meditate, for 30 minutes a day, this is all great, but so much of this is predicated on judgment. And when there's a shift, a grand cosmic cycle, an event that may take place that would change and shift the particles, our entire electromagnetic field, the soup that we're all living. This is not anymore about judgment. This is not anymore about what we did or we didn't do, or the law of cause and effect, or karma. This is about us shifting internally. It's about us being the walking, talking, breathing satellites, and we will change. We are going to change. We are electrical, and we're changing every moment. We're changing. It's subtle, so we don't recognize it, but we're changing every moment. Humanity is growing and changing every moment.
Yes, and actually, that's what may allow to lift the embargo on the exo-consciousness, exopolitics, the exo-civilizations, and the fact that we're ourselves a stargate to the rest of the cosmos and the dimensions. and we
Yes.
are multi-dimensional, and that's and we are not just one single physical piece of meat on two legs that's walking around without any consciousness of what what's connecting us to the rest of the universe. That's I think that this is the big rediscovery, because we've known it forever. I mean, it's in the ancient.
And we're all in
Well,
it
it's
together.
written in our ancient texts, so we've been there, and we have these cycles, and we obviously need these cycles for some reason, and we'll know what that reason is at some point. And it's important for us to remind ourselves that it's okay to go through these cycles, that it might be a rough ride even at times, and to remain hopeful that they will change, that it won't always be. I mean, it seems like right now, you could say, for those who are opening their eyes, it could look like it's a very dark time as well, with the attacks in Paris, and I really feel for the people there, because they have very limited access to information, and what they're getting is telling them stuff which may not be giving them enough to make a healthy conclusion about what's going on. But at the same time, right now, you have an event like this happen, and within minutes, there are those who are seeing through it as well, and they're publishing the information about what's going on, and so it's not as one-sided as it used to be.
Right. It's really a time where people are turning towards disobedience versus following the mainstream media like sheeps, like they've always used to, because there's too many lies being presented, and cognitive dissonance is no longer a weapon, even though they have psychotronics and technology that in Packing for Mars. I think it was Laura that said it. Technology goes where the money is, but the problem is the money is the problem today, because the economy is crumbling over here, and they're spreading bad news, disheartening news, like life expectancies is going down in France, or things like this, and they change the news every so often, every other week it's different. So whenever.
Right, but it's not true, and make sure that your listeners are. All I can say is, it ain't true, man. Whatever you're hearing, we know from people that are inside those existing bad systems, that are breaking up within those systems and saying, this cannot go on. I can't continue to participate in this structure. And they're coming out, and they're doing things as we speak to try and set up ways to bring about this quickening of awakening. It's happening. So whatever you hear out there, whatever negative information you're getting, whatever limitations are being thrust upon you, just take it as another little bit of information from one side of some perspective, but it's certainly not anywhere close to the big picture of what's really going on in the universe.
Right, and that's very symbolic, that France being the spot on Earth where the cabal is actually has a tight knot over the collective consciousness, because people are led to believe through education and mainstream news and documentaries. Well, actually, it's good that we're getting some documentaries coming from the States, translated into French, because it opens up their minds, because before it's like there's nothing going on here. It's just we're alone in the universe, and this is the country where the nuclear power plants is basically holding all the energy and the power for the whole country up. It's terrible. We have power plants all over the place here. It's just a radioactive.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I like about the French people is that when they do tune into something,
right,
they actually they hit the streets. I mean, I remember when I first came to Europe, the biggest discussion was about a constitution for the EU, and I read some material about how in France the top 10 best-selling books of the day were books analyzing the proposed EU constitution. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, you would never have that in the States. People wouldn't be talking about They certainly wouldn't be top 10 best-selling books about the Constitution of the United States and what's wrong with it. I mean, it's
were allowed to vote, and they said no, and they still pushed into the EU under.
They're being pushed by other forces, but they're not so stupid. They're smart. They're just skeptical. They've probably been bamboozled so long, and I mean, but I think there's a spirit in the French people that really is like a BS detector. But if they're given the truth about something, they will go on the streets and make sure that the truth is heard.
It's the same thing in Austria. It's the same thing in Germany.
People in Germany complain about gas prices, or in Austria, but in France they hit the streets and block the highways until they do something about it. I mean, that's the kind of action we need to do with the embargo of truth. We need to demand.
It started in Greece, and it started in Spain, and it went on in Austria and so forth. But what we don't need is another bloody revolution, because this only serves the predators who have already prepared a replacement team for the team that's in place right now, because they've always functioned that way. All the revolutions were fomented and put together by the same clique of predators throughout the years. And those are the 300 family bloodlines, and the Merovingians and the others, and France being. Question from the audience. Sorry, have any of you guys seen E.T.s?
Well, yes. I mean, there's one in the film.
Right.
And what I realized from it was that E.T.s don't necessarily take on the form of little green men with big heads and almond-shaped eyes. That actually the E.T.s could very well be living right beside us, and we don't even know it.
Right. Well, hybrids are among us, so that's for sure. We may be hybrids ourselves.
What do you say? Have you seen an E.T., Tonia?
I will just put it this way. I don't know life any other way. It's the only thing I've ever known.
Right.
So it's my truth.
Tonia, you're from Venus anyway, in Craig's movie. So that's a given. And last word, I guess your next project, you mentioned it briefly, regarding AI, artificial intelligence, and the more naturally connected mankind or humanity. Is that what your next project is about?
Oh gosh, we have several upcoming projects that expand on all these areas, whether it's AI, ancient artifacts. We did the Klaus-Donna Chronicles. We have much more work to be done on that front, and other projects that are in the works right now that we can't discuss right now, but they're all very exciting and all lead to more answers and even more questions. But
I think the most frustrating part is that when you're making films like this and you want to maintain their integrity, you can't really go to conventional funding sources and expect that you're going to be creating a project which is uninfluenced by people which have an agenda. So all of our projects to date have been, I guess we consider them sort of uncontaminated from any kind of outside influence. So, but at the same time, the price you pay is that it takes you forever to get them done. You wish you had unlimited sources. I wish I had some of the money these secret op people had, even just a very, very small portion. We could do our own secret ops that would do an absolute number on the world mark. We have got some projects on the back burner, which are just gonna even go further than anything we've ever done before. And the biggest frustration is not to be able to do them right now, with everything we need to do them.
Right.
But they will be done eventually, and if they're not by us, by someone.
Yeah, I wish you had the same budget as George Lucas's last movie.
Yeah.
Well, the key is maintaining authenticity and maintaining integrity. And when you maintain the integrity, lots of times you have to do it privately and internally to get the correct message out. If you don't have the proper team, or there are a lot involved, or you have investors involved on a larger scale, Many times it can skew the direction of the project. And with the information that we need to embark on with these independent films, I think it's integral to stay to the integrity of the messages. And it's what we did with Packing for Mars. It's what we need to do with the projects that are coming.
How did you get it funded? Was it crowdfunding partially, or?
Self-funded everything we've done. Clostonia Chronicles, Stranger was some crowdfunding, Solar Revolution, and Packing for Mars.
What's the best platform for crowdfunding? Will you recommend to our viewers?
We don't actually do crowdfunding, so I wouldn't. I mean, Stranger was done by Craig.
Yes.
I'm not sure, what did he use?
Indiegogo and Kickstarter.
But I would hate to endorse any of them. I don't know. I think for us, you know, we really do have the fact that we have the ability to operate the tools necessary and the skill set necessary to actually produce something doesn't require us to have to go and crowdfund something. And we also feel, I think we felt with Packing for Mars, we didn't want to crowdfund because we were so sensitive to getting this information out. We didn't want anybody knowing about this project because we just wanted to quietly work on it without a lot of waves, you know. And we know that if a lot of people find out about an idea you're working on, both positive and negative waves begin to turbulently swerve out there, and then they could throw you off course, or you could get veered off the path. So it's better to keep things extremely quiet and just work on it.
It was interesting with Packing for Mars when I met Frank, and there's a scene in the film where there's this mysterious free spirit that's hitchhiking on the road, and it's really how it went down. And I jumped on this journey, not expecting it. I was sort of blindsided to the whole idea and the whole adventure, but it was a grand adventure at that. And everything unfolded just as it should. And it was integral for those past 5 years of exploring these clandestine locations and topics. We went 5 years in the making, including post-production. We didn't tell even our family and friends.
Oh.
We kept it only within ourselves. We didn't even release the name of the film because any sort of thought process out there could sway the outcome or could change in some way the course we were on. Ideas and thoughts and manifestations can impact certain...
Totally. We were so quiet about it, we didn't even the presenters that we filmed, you know, we vanished off the map of the planet for a long time, and I think a lot of the people involved in the film that we filmed were surprised when we re-emerged with this document, because it's catching a lot of people kind of off guard. A lot of people may not even know what to think of it, because, you know, we really did take a totally different approach to making this film than anything that we knew was out there, deliberately so.
So the sensitive aspect of the field, or the topic of the movie, didn't spark any threats whatsoever, or pressure from some, I don't know, some government-based or
not yet.
Agencies, or
and hopefully not in the future either. I believe, you know, that a lot of the people that are insiders that may still be in the system are happy that projects like this get out there. And I think we left it, you know, like Tonia was saying, we really took, and I have to credit her for this, because she was really the diplomat here. She was saying, we can't judge anybody, we can't point fingers, we can't draw conclusions, we just have to show the material, and then people will find their own compass to it and know if it resonates or not. So this method really does wonders toward keeping a lot of negative energies away from you, because, you know, it's really up to you to decipher all of the information and unlock it with your own key, which is your heart and your understanding and your own level of consciousness.
Awesome. Yeah, it was so important to have all the presenters that we had come to the table, because they all brought a different facet and a different angle within the field. And I know oftentimes when you get into ufology, exopolitics, disclosure, the New Age arena, you get different factions. And it was really important for us to bring everybody together as one voice. And to bring everybody together to speak their own truth, because it's not about, you know, who aligns with who. you know, what information is this, and who, you know, who came first. It's all about the information and the truth coming forward, and collectively putting together the big puzzle.
Right, right, right. This is the big puzzle of our reality that you're contributing to.
Right. We've just laid a few more pieces on the table, but I mean, there's still many, many pieces left.
Right, 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 right. I'm going to thank you very, very much, guys, because I think we've gone over a little bit, or not sure, and but it was really a fun time, and I was really, really happy and enlightened to have you on. And if anybody has any questions, I guess they can go see your movie, or you can, you know, what can you tell us about the movie promotion for the next release dates, and can you give you the final word regarding the movie schedule?
You want to do this?
You can go to packingformarsmovie.com. And there you can find the information on the press. We have a tour schedule where you can see upcoming screenings. We'll be screening at the International UFO Congress in Fountain Hills, Arizona in February. We'll be at the UFO Conscious Life Expo in LA in February. We'll be at Nexus this summer in Australia with Duncan Rhodes. You can go to Real House off of our website, packingformarsmovie.com. You can stream the film. Eventually we will have DVDs available on Amazon. Right now we're looking at theatrical and festival releases, so we may pull back a little while for the Amazon release. But that's where you can find the movie and information with our presenters and our filmmakers.
Great, awesome. And for my French viewers, Solar Revolution is available in French as well.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well,
that's www.solar-revolution-movie.com. You can see Solar Revolution as well.
I'd like to, yeah.
The site's in German, French, and English.
It's in German, French, and English on the site. And I want to thank you, Mark, for taking so much time to talk with us. And it's really great to be on the Camelot Network. It's really great to see that it's come to reality, that it's manifested, and that this work is getting out there in this channel.
Yes, it was me live from Normandy and France, and you from Germany, and hello to the rest of the world, and we'll see you next month. I don't know my next guest yet, but you'll find out real soon. Thank you, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Carrie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.